Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the channel. Today, as you can see, we're going to be showing off a Zefra deck profile. Zefra is a sort of pendulum control strategy that can abuse its searches to grab its counterattacks. And it can very easily bring out VFD and protect it with said counterattacks. So let's just get into the list, shall we? Put this off to the side. To begin with, we play 3 Zefra. Zefra is your main skill, as it has the ability to copy other skills by sending them from your deck to the extra deck. And this will also allow you to access your main starters by sending them from your deck to the extra deck. Next, we have, for some high skill as well, it's your main starter, 3 Zefra. You can abuse it a lot, I would say, as it allows you to grab any Zefra spell or trap, or even a Yang Zing spell trap, and it just generates resources every time it's summoned or destroyed. So it allows you to play off a more control based style, and also sort of aggro, as you can grab nearly every card in your deck off. Next, we play 2 Zefra. This is the main VFD enabler, as with Zefra, the card you just saw, you're able to chain block with this card, as you can go chain 1 Zefra, chain 2 Zefra to make it into a tuner. And that will give you access to level 9 synchros, which is really important. Later in this video I'm going to show you why. Also keep in mind, when it uses this effect, it goes to the bottom of the deck, which will allow you to abuse it with Zefra and scales if you already have a high scale. So yeah. Next, we play 2 Zefra. Zefra is just some generic face-up destruction that's also a low main scale that you can search. Next, we play the one of Zefra Extinction. It's generic face down, so set card destruction, and you can also search it for high scale spell. Moving on, we have a Madolche package in triple. Madolche Magdalene searches the next part of the engine, and it's just really useful to start things off if you open up with a bad hand. Next is Pet Incessor, which is a free summon which usually search off Magdalene. Okay, moving on, we play for another small engine with the 1 Deneb. Deneb will search any of your scales with the Zefra Boon or Extinction, so grabs you generic destruction and a high or low scale depending on your hand. Moving on, another one of this is our VFT enabler in Gizmekaku. Gizmekaku is just a way to enable VFD, as it's a free summon if you have something in the extra monster zone and it's level 9. Moving on to some hand traps, we have the Cyframe package with Driver and Triple Gemma. Moving on, we have Triple Effect Failure for more hand traps, and Triple Ash. Okay, let's move on to our spells, shall we? We play Triple Providence, Zefra Providence. Okay, Providence searches any Zefra card, and also doubles as protection during your opponent's turn, since it's the turn after it's activated, so keep that in mind. Next, we play Triple Oracle Zefra, which is just searches any Zefra monster on activation. However, we usually use it for the second effect, as when you synchro summon using Zefra monsters, you can stack a monster on top of your deck. Moving on to some one-offs, we have Zefra Path, which is just a floodgate, as it can stop Nibiru too, so keep that in mind, since Nibiru needs to summon a token, and this card, at the cost of shuffling all your non-Zefra monsters back, stops all summons except from the hand and extra deck, so therefore your opponent can't Nibiru since they can't summon the token. Moving on, we have the 1 upstart for just generic draw power, since we could run this deck at 40. 1 terraforming to get to our 2 oracles, triple oracles I mean. And 1 reinforcement, as it's the same as Deneb, will grab us one of our low scales or high scales in Zefra Fubin or Zefra Extinction. Moving on to some traps. we only play one of traps, and that's 9 Pillars of the Yang Zing. This is a negate that is searchable off Zefra Nui? Yeah, Zefra Nui, sorry. Also, it's a very good counter trap as it doesn't destroy, it shuffles it back into the deck, so any graveyard effects, you don't have to worry about that. And it also destroys the Yang Zing you control, so Zefra Nui. When Zefra Nui is destroyed, you get to search a Zefra or Yang Zing card. But it's mostly Zefra, because this is the only Yang Zing you control, apart from Zefra Raxi. Moving on, we have just generic destruction and Zefra War. Zefra War can also be used from your hand if you have scales, so keep that in mind. Our last trap is Zefra Divine Strike, which is just searchable negation. Let's move on to our extra deck, shall we? Yeah. For our synchro monsters, we have 1 Omega, just for some hand shenanigans, and to grab back banished Zefra stuff you banished off your counter trap, Divine Strike. Next we have Chafeng, Phantom of the Yang Zing. When you use Zefra monsters to summon it, it's a floodgate for Earth monsters. Also, when it's destroyed, it can search your hand trap, which is pretty nice. Moving on, 1 Ravenous Croco Dragon, Archifis. Archifis is one of the main materials we use for VFD, as it's level 9 and generic. Also draws on summon, which is useful with Oracle since Oracle stacks. So you chain 1 Croco Dragon, chain 2 Oracle to stack Kaku on top of the deck, and since Kaku is a free summon, you have 2 level 9s on the field to make VFD. Moving on to some XCs, we play 1 Gun Granite. This is what allows you to search Zefrath from your deck if you open really bad hand. And it's pretty easy to summon, as the Medolce package is there just to summon it because it's generic. Moving on, we have 41 Baguska. It's just a generic skill drain basically, which is very useful if you don't have a good hand and you have to resort to using it. So it's just bad hand, bring out Baguska and try and store for a couple of turns. Moving on, we have number 106 Giant Hand. Giant Hand's just generic monster negation, and you can make it if you want, or if you have a bad hand as well. Next is Castel. Castel's an easy way to get rid of floodgates that hurt your deck, such as Anti-Spell. Moving on, for our big 2 boys, we have 1 Infintrak Earth Slicer. Earth Slicer is a good disruption, and it can replenish its materials by attacking an opponent's monster. And when it destroys it by battle, it equips it, so you can have generic disruption every turn until your opponent gets rid of it. Moving on, our last XCs is the true king of all calamities, also known as VFD. It's one of the best floodgates in the game at the moment, as having the ability to turn off all monster effects your opponent controls that activate on the field for a whole turn is a game winner against most decks, including some meta decks like Dragon Link and Infernoble. Okay, finally we have our links, so let's start off with IP Masquerader. IP is just some generic field presence and potential disruption on your opponent's turn. Next, we have Cyframe Lord Lambda. Lambda allows you to use your Cyframe package with monsters on the field. It's also generic link 2, which is helpful. Moving on, we play the 1 Nightmare Cerberus. Cerberus is just generic monster disruption that can easily be swapped out with Nightmare Phoenix depending on your locals. Moving on, we have Landform Kiss. Sorry if I butchered that. It's just a way to get rid of tokens if your opponent's playing Mystic Mine, and it's generic link 2. Then for link 3s, we played the Nightmare Unicorn. Unicorn's a good disruption that shuffles stuff back into deck, and usually want to use it with IP during your opponent's turn. And lastly, we have our second win con of the deck, which is an easy way to clear games without having to spend too much money on the extra deck with Boral Sword. So if you have enough money, I would recommend going for an access code package by getting rid of some of the 2 link 2s or like a couple of them for a little access code engine. That's if you have the money for it. If not, then just keep what I've got here, even though this deck does cost a little bit. You can change most of the extra deck except for the Croco Dragon in the BFD. Everything else you can change. So thanks for watching the video. Remember to absolutely smash that subscribe button for more deck profiles like this. And see you next video.